Welcome. In this video, I would like to address the use of gender-free language in academic writing. I will abide the instructions of APA style as described in the publication manual of the American Psychological Association, 7th edition. However, I will use web pages from the APA style blog to give you a visual reference to the details that I present. I think it's important that we demonstrate respect to one another. At least from my experience, in the last few decades, I have observed a move toward the integration of gender-neutral pronouns, or at least using the gender-specific pronouns that individuals prefer for their self-identification. Now, I identify as a cis male, so I prefer the pronouns he, him, his to be used when referring to me. But I recognize that not everyone uses these traditional pronouns or prefers that the traditional pronouns be used in reference to them. And frequently, I may not know what pronoun any given person prefers to have applied to them. So it's important that in my own academic writing, I either use a gender-free pronoun or use the specific set of pronouns that the person about whom I'm referring prefers. I will include hyperlinks to all of the web pages that I display during this video, and the hyperlinks will be included in the description of the video. This page from the APA Style blog addresses gender and the need to demonstrate an unbiased presentation of information about human subjects. The second paragraph begins, "Gender offers an added layer of specificity when interpreting patterns or phenomena of human behavior. However, the terms related to gender and sex are often conflated, making precision essential to writing about gender and or sex without bias. The language related to gender identity and sexual orientation has also evolved rapidly, and it's important to use the terms that people use to describe themselves." Now, I don't wish to claim any particular expertise in this topic of either sexual orientation or gender identification. My area of expertise is in academic writing, and I would like to encourage you to demonstrate through your academic writing that you are not introducing unnecessary bias into your language. This blog article continues, "Gender refers to the attitudes, feelings, and behaviors that a given culture associates with a person's biological sex. Gender is a social construct and a social identity. Use the term gender when referring to people as social groups. For example, when reporting the genders of participants in an academic paper." And then examples of the use of gender within academic writing is included. "Sex refers to biological sex assignment. Use the term sex when the biological distinction of sex assignment, such as the sex that is assigned to a human at birth, is predominant. Use gender instead of sex to avoid ambiguity over whether sex means sexual behavior." And this is some a nuance that I have advised students for many years, even out of the context of bias-free language. I've advised students to use the word gender when making a distinction between types of people. For example, males, females. Because the word sex can often be misunderstood to mean the behavior that biological entities demonstrate. Going back to this paragraph, in some cases, there may not be a clear distinction between biological and acculturative factors. So, a discussion of both sex and gender might be appropriate. For example, in the study of sexual orientation, researchers continue to examine the extent to which sexuality or sexual orientation, such as the attraction to sex, gender, or some combination thereof, is a biological and/or an acculturative phenomenon. Gender identity is a component of gender that describes a person's psychological sense of their own gender. Many people describe gender identity as deeply felt, an inherent sense of being a boy or a man, a male, a girl, a woman, or a female, or a non-binary gender, such as gender queer, gender non-conforming, gender neutral, agender, gender fluid. And this is where I need to advise I am not an expert in either the psychological or sociological elements of gender identification. My focus here, particularly in this video, is to help you apply APA bias-free language standards. Gender identity applies to all individuals and is not characteristic only of transgender or gender non-conforming individuals. This is important. As I said earlier, I self-identify as cis male. Therefore, I prefer the pronouns he, him, his to be applied when reference is made to me. Other people may also identify as a cis female or a cis male, but prefer that another pronoun be applied when making reference to them. For example, I could self-identify as cis male, but prefer the pronouns them, they, their to be applied to me because for whatever reason, the reason is not important. It's that I have expressed a preference, and therefore I would hope that others would respect that preference. The challenge comes in when one does not know how to address or to make reference to another human. I may look at someone and they have the physical characteristics that I would normally associate with one's or the other's sex, male or female. On the other hand, that person may not prefer to be identified as cis male or cis female, and therefore have a set of referential pronouns that is different than he, him, his, she, her, hers. So I recommend in academic writing to refer to people when their gender identity preference is unknown, using a non-sexual pronoun. For example, you may have noticed in some of my earlier videos that when I refer to authors that I am using in support of the arguments that I'm making in the videos, I may refer to those authors as they or them, even when it's a single author. Because unless I know how that author prefers to be identified, out of respect to that person, I use what I was taught as a child is a plural pronoun, even though in current usage can be allowed as a singular pronoun, as in an author named Tom Abbott. I don't know what Abbott's gender identification is, therefore I refer to Abbott as they or them, or in the possessive, their. And that's THEIR. And my advice regarding the use of what had been formerly plural pronouns is supported in the advice presented by APA Style. The singular they is a generic third-person singular pronoun in English. Use of the singular they is endorsed as part of APA Style because it is inclusive of all people and helps writers avoid making assumptions about gender. This is at the heart of the advice that I've been giving to students for many years. And if you think it's weird, or if you think it's inappropriate, I challenge you to listen closely to the way, at least Americans, but I've observed it in Europe also, the way Americans and others use English. We often refer to an individual using they or them or their in our colloquial speech. I have to admit, I don't know why we've been doing that, but it's relatively common. Listen to the way your acquaintances speak when they're comfortable and they've shed their formalities and they're just talking naturally. We use these pronouns that grammatically we might argue were reserved for use in the plural. We use them in their as singular pronouns. So integrating them for the purposes of bias-free language is not out of keeping with the way English is used colloquially already. Now, there's a hidden elephant in the room here. If I were to use what were traditionally plural pronouns as singular pronouns, do I use a singular or a plural verb? APA Style advises use the singular they, them, their, but use what would traditionally be thought of as a plural verb. So, if I'm referring to Tom, and I don't know Tom's preferred gender identification, I can refer to Tom as they are a professor at the university. And I will admit, this poses some cognitive challenges because when I make the statement, they are a professor, am I referring to one person or two people? the decision has to be made within the context of the sentence. If I'm referring about Tom, or if I'm referring to Tom, and I then state they are a professor, from the context of the sentence, the listener or the reader could understand that I am still referring to one person. I just haven't identified Tom as any particular gender or sex identification. The same applies to them, their, theirs, themselves, or themself. And this gets a little bit awkward, but with careful writing, and careful oral speech, the quantity of person or persons being identified can be made clear. It's also possible to just recompose the sentence to avoid the use of a pronoun. For example, rather than stating, I delivered a care package to them, I could say, I delivered a care package to the client. Or if in plural, private people usually keep to themselves, that's not a problem because people itself is already plural and themselves was traditionally plural, but also could be now used as a bias-free identification pronoun. On the APA Style blog is a very useful webpage on bias-free language. Look in the description for a hyperlink to this, because each of these are hyperlinks to additional detailed information that can help you to better understand how to use bias-free language in your academic writing. I hope this introduction to the use of bias-free language in academic writing is useful to you. I found it a bit challenging to ensure that my academic writing is as free of bias in regard to gender identification as possible. I'm by no means perfect. It's the way I compose my sentences still needs to be carefully edited and proofread. But what I have noticed is that my oral language has improved and is less demonstrative of gender bias because I've been concentrating on improving the quality of my formal writing. I hope the same is true for you. Concentrating on how I use language in writing has affected the way I use language in speech. And I think for the better. The learning to be respectful of others' preferences in our own writing actually feels good. It feels like I am being careful of other people in a way that respects them, and I like that feeling. So for now, I wish you the absolute best in all of your academic writing. I look forward to seeing you in a future video. Bye for now.